What's up, everyone? I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Vegas 87, looking at the biggest winners and losers from the card. And I kind of gave it away in the thumbnail there. Biggest winner on this card for me has to be Vinicius Oliveira because of that knockout he got. Early knockout of the year candidate for Loke Dog here. We'll watch it. I don't think Twitter, because I'm playing it off Twitter, it's going to boot me off of YouTube here. But you guys can see it there coming through. Nice left hand. And then boom! One of the best knockouts we've seen in UFC history. Love that finish. Amazing stuff here. I mean, this is what everyone's going to be talking about from this event, I think. So as far as stock risers, Vinicius Oliveira has got to be one of them. He didn't have like a ton of hype coming into this card. He was the betting favorite, just a slight one. I want to say he was like a minus 150 or something around there. Going into the fight, minus 135, so not that much of a favorite at all. But you can see it there. This guy's a highlight reel machine. Third round finish in a fight that I thought, in that first round, I didn't think he won the first. The second round, it looked like the momentum was going his way, but Vinicius Oliveira getting it done in a big way here. 28 years old, from Brazil, bantamweight. That's a division that is completely deep, or very deep, I should say. So big things ahead here for Vinicius Oliveira, getting it done in the third round. In his UFC debut. So you gotta put that one on there for sure as far as a big stock riser. Okay, the other big stock riser on this card is Aiemann Zahabi. Came into this fight, and remember I talked about this on the preview show. He was a plus 575 underdog, like crazy. Like I thought I have no issue with Javid Basharat being the favorite, just that much of a favorite that seemed a little bit nutty. And we got to talk about the fact that Aiemann Zahabi's been on a little bit of a roll lately, right? So he gets the win here at UFC Vegas 87. It was close. I'll give him that. Like, it's not like, I think he completely stole this fight or anything like that. I think it was very close. I think round one definitely went to Javid. Second round went to Aiemann Zahabi. And I think the third round went to Aiemann Zahabi. But the third round could have gone the other way as well. I saw a couple 29-28 scorecards on there. And just to kind of further this argument a little bit, and this isn't the be-all, end-all, but if you go look on MMA decisions right now, I know most of the media did have this one for Aiemann Zahabi, but you saw a few scorecards there for Basharat as well. Just to give you guys a little bit of an example here. So 3 media members did score the fight for Basharat, but let's highlight the fact that Aiemann Zahabi, like I remember Vince Morales beating him a couple years back, and then Ricardo Ramos knocking him out back in 2017. Like it looked like it was going to be like a 3-and-done fighter in the UFC, and look at that now. He's won 4 in a row. He's got 2 finishes in that span. The Javid win is very good. Javid undefeated going into this. So big win there for Zahabi. I know he's 36, but look, up here in Canada, our fighters haven't been doing so well. So this is a really good sign to see. And I think for Zahabi, this is going to give him a good opponent here next, because if Javid had won this fight, he was going to get that ranked opponent. I think you could make a case for Zahabi getting a ranked opponent next in terms of, who's in the rankings right now. I'm just even trying to think like what would be a good fight next for him here. Does he fight like a Ricky Simone? Like, I think he's earned that. Honestly, I do. I mean, he's got what, 4 wins in a row. I think that certainly warrants a ranked opponent at this point, and he's not getting any younger. I've heard rumblings about the UFC coming back to Canada this year, so get him on the next Canada card whenever that is. And Aiemann Zahabi, one of the big winners on this card. Okay, let's get back to the rest of the card now. We'll round out who I think was one of the big stock risers on this card. And it's Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And look, I know there's going to be people watching this video going, James, what are you talking about? It wasn't a great fight. He got the win, and he was an underdog, and people were counting him out. And I even picked against him in this spot. And, I certainly felt like there was a chance that Rozenstruik could win. He's fought better opposition. He's had 5-round experience, and it paid off. Because you know what? Like, he was stuffing those takedowns. And by the way, I saw in the post-fight, DC talking about your wrestling takedown being a lot better. I think that people forget he stuffed a bunch of Curtis Blades' takedowns as well, too. So I don't think it's that bad as far as what Rozenstruik's done. Much better performance than him getting choked out by Jailton Almeida. But I think the thing you guys got to remember as far as stock risers on this video is that had Rozenstruik lost, they were just going to keep feeding him prospects and sort of use that prospect to build off him. I think now, he's 35, but at heavyweight that, you could be 20 because that division's so old as far as some of the names in there. But I think with Rozenstruik, this gives him new life in the division. There's a lot of interesting matchups for him out there. What's available? That's a good question. I think we're going to have to see how some of these fights pan out. You've got obviously Almeida and Blades next week, maybe the loser of that fight. I know he's fought both of them already. But I mean, probably not fighting Almeida if Almeida loses that. But why can't I find heavyweight here? What's going on? Oh, because I'm going in the wrong direction. That would help. So at heavyweight, I mean, you've got, a few options here. Has he fought Spivak? I guess he has. I feel like he's fought almost everyone, right? So, no, I don't think he has fought Spivak. Unless I'm missing something here. Has Spivak got an opponent? I don't think he does. Let let me just double check that. I know someone's going to watch this and go, say something about Spivak, but let's see here. The Polar Bear, 29, lost to Cyril Gahn. Yeah, it works for me. Rosenstruik and Spivak next, I think makes a lot of sense. But again, I think the main thing here is he was in a main event and he got the win and he got a stoppage, and it was a, you know, doctor stoppage, right? But or retirement, I should say. But still, you got to give Rosenstruik his credit here. He went out there and he got the win, and he wasn't supposed to going into this. What type of dog was he? I think he was like a he was a plus 150 underdog there. So again, Rosenstruik has to get some mention as well. And then as far as honorable mentions, I'm gonna go to the bantamweight fight between Umar Nurmagomedov and Almakin. I thought Almakin actually looked good in this fight. He actually dropped Umar in that first round. And he survived. You know, there's a lot of people I saw saying that Umar was going to run through him, you know, get a stoppage win. That didn't happen. It went the distance. Bekzat, I should say. I think his stock rose. It was one of those fights, and we see those every now and then, where a fighter will lose a fight and their stock actually goes up. I feel like that's what happened here tonight, or today, I should say, with Almakin. You know, going 3 rounds with Umar, a guy that a lot of people are calling a future champion. I mean, this, I mentioned it in the Discord chat today. This reminded me a little bit of the Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev fight a couple years ago. Now, granted, that was short notice, but just the fact that he went 3 rounds with, you know, really good bantamweight, I think speaks volumes. And then one other honorable mention I'll mention here in the stock riser, Steve Irsay. The only reason I didn't put him in my top 3 here is because he was expected to finish Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell hasn't had a win in a while, and coming off a bit of a layoff coming into this one too, if I'm not mistaken. He's 34. Yeah, he was coming off a knockout loss in 2022. I don't think there was, I don't really know anyone who's picking Matt Schnell in that spot, but Steve Irsay getting a quick mention here in this video just for a stock riser. There are other winners on this card, but those are the ones that I wanted to focus on. Okay, let's get to the stock droppers on this card. And I think the one that really stands out to me is Javid Basharat. Now, look, I mentioned it there with Ayman Zahabi. He had a close fight. I don't have an issue if there were people who thought he won that fight. It was that close. No issues there. But it's the fact that he was such a big favorite. And, you know, that's not his fault. Aaron Bronstetter was quick to point this out. I think when the line opened on this fight, Basharat was only like a 2-1 favorite, and people kept betting the line. So that kind of ties into the stock thing, though, right? How do people perceive Javid Basharat? They feel like he is, you know, I've heard some mention future champion. He got beat tonight by a veteran. So, you know, he's not there yet. Can he get there? Absolutely. He's still very young. He's 28, relatively young, I should say. But yeah, he got beat by a veteran tonight. And I think that's one of the criticisms I always have with any of these fighters that are on the come up. Who are you fighting? What's your level of opposition? You know, Ayman Zahabi, I think, was a good test. He didn't pass it. So I think for me, just the fact that he's undefeated and there was a lot of sort of expectations with him, he has to be the biggest stock dropper on this card because he lost his fight. So we have to go with that. The other stock dropper on this card has to be Shamil Gaziev in the main event. Again, he was the favorite here. He was also undefeated. He's 34 years old. I think the difference between him and Javid, as far as why I put Shamil in the second spot here, is that he had only had one UFC fight. Whereas Javid Basharat had a few. You felt like, you know, maybe there was a little bit more upside there looking at the 2 fighters. But I wouldn't have an issue if you want to put, you know, Shamil first and Javid second. Doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't matter the order on this video. I'm the one who created this series. So, but yeah, just to me, a missed opportunity here. You know, he had a main event. He was favored. He hadn't lost before. To me, that was a spot where he could have capitalized, and he could have entered, you know, the conversation of, you know, heavyweights on the rise. But now he is back to the drawing board after losing this fight, and clearly cardio is an issue for him as well. We saw him breathing pretty heavy. I mean, these two were kind of standing at each other later in the fight. So Shamil Gaziev, also one of the biggest losers on the card. And then on the prelims, put him on here again because he was a favorite, only a slight favorite, I think, going into this fight. Al Sawadi out of Fortis MMA making his UFC debut. I thought he looked good in this fight, but he ended up getting finished in his debut. You know, if the UFC had it their way, they'd probably want him to win because I believe he was the younger fighter. I think Loke's a little bit older, if I'm not mistaken. Might be wrong on that. Yeah, Loke's 33. So I think the idea here was you wanted to kind of build up Al Sawadi in this fight. He ends up getting finished in his debut. Again, there was a bit of stock going into this UFC debut with the fact that he had, 5 wins in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I hate when they put the grappling fights on Tapology because it always throws me off. But yeah, I felt like there was a lot of sort of, you know, expectation here, and he didn't live up to it in here as well. So Al Sawadi, again, we'll see how he looks in his next UFC fight, but his stock definitely dropped. Now, There's two fighters on this card that won their fights, but I think their stock did drop a little bit. And I know I'm going to get some flack for saying this, but the first one has got to be Muhammad Mokaev. He barely won this fight. In fact, kind of like the Javid Basharat and Ayman Zahabi fight, I think you could have scored that fight for Alex Perez. That third round was very close. I think Perez won round 2. The problem with Perez was he didn't really do much damage when he was stuffing those takedowns, right? And that was sort of a big thing in this fight. But Mokaev didn't do a whole lot either. I know he was trying to get the submission, but Perez, being the veteran that he is, was able to survive a lot of that stuff. He was able to stuff a lot of takedowns. I just think this was not a good performance from Mokaev, and he may end up getting the title shot next. That's why I didn't want to put him as an official stock dropper, because it's going to look pretty weird if he wins this fight and gets the fight at UFC 301 due to timing and all that. And the UFC may go that route, but I'm going to tell you guys right now, Muhammad Mokaev fights Alexander Pantoja. I think at a minimum, Pantoja would be like a -300 favorite, because there's nothing about this performance from Mokaev that thought he's going to beat the champ. And Alex Perez is a guy notorious for struggling against top-tier competition, and Mokaev struggled against him. And I know, not every opponent means everything, but it is a little bit concerning that we have not seen sort of a signature performance from Mokaev just yet. Even Tim Elliott, that was a third-round finish, but that was a very close fight leading into that third round. So, again, Mokaev did get the win. He's probably fighting for the title next, unless they give it to Brandon Royval. I think they're going to go with Mokaev, though, because it's fresh blood that's in Brazil. Plus, there's that whole storyline of him potentially being one of the youngest champions by getting a win here. But certainly was not, as George St. Pierre said back to Matt Hughes back in the day, impressed by his performance on this card. And then one more I'll add to, and he also won, and he was kind of in a lose-lose situation, unfortunately, because Umar really should have been fighting a ranked opponent. Like, bantamweights, what's going on? You got to fight this guy, right? Like, I don't think there's any question about that, but Umar, like, he got dropped in the first round. He clearly won this fight. Like, I'm going to just state the obvious here, okay? He clearly won his matchup. It's just the fact that he looked really tired after this fight, and it was a 3-round fight. And I know he mentioned after the fact that he had some stuff going into this fight. I'd really like to know what that was, because if that's any indication of his cardio based off this fight, like based off an opponent that actually gave him a tough outing here, it's not going to look good if he's in a 5-round fight. Like right now, like he called out Corey Sandhagen. Who's picking Umar, right? I mean, I know there'll be people that pick Umar just because of the last name, but I just think that like him looking so tired late in the fight in a 3-round fight is a little bit concerning. So again, I think Umar was in a lose-lose situation. He fought this unknown, guy who at least UFC fans did not know much about, and Al-Makin. So like no matter what he was going to do, I mean, this reminds me a bit of when Arman had to fight Joaquim Silva, and people were like, "Oh, Arman got exposed because he got clipped in that fight." Seemed actually kind of a similar situation, actually, if we're looking at it. So, but I just think the optics of Umar looking so tired after the fight, that's what made his stock drop a little bit here. He's probably still going to get a big fight after this, and he obviously won this fight. Like there's no debate here. He clearly beat his opponent. It's just the fact he looked a little bit tired at the end of that. That does bring the stock down a little bit in my opinion, but that's just my thoughts there. So I want to know what you guys think. Who do you think had the biggest stock rise? Who do you think had the biggest stock drop? Let me know in the comments. This is always open to interpretation. I don't have all the answers here, people, but this is just my perspective after watching the card, who I think, was some of the biggest winners, some of the biggest losers. But let's have a discussion in the comments. Always like to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @LynchOnSports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.